Raditz was stoic across the field. The Guardians of the Galaxy, Peter and Gamora, sat on either side of him, Peter giving him the best show of support that he possibly could, occasionally patting the boy on the back, as Gamora just watched the scene playing out in front of her, stoic as she watched Vegeta's face as he spoke, examining every twitch of his eye muscles, every movement of his body as he told his tale. Gamora was raised by the mighty Thanos, built into a weapon of espionage and destruction. She knew all too well how to spot a liar, just like how she knew how to spot someone under threat, someone who was being coerced to say something they didn't believe. Neither of those looks fell on the eyes of the Prince of All Saiyans. He was calm the entire time, collected, his breathing was even, his stare never wavered from any of their faces. He didn't fidget, even slightly. To the deadliest girl in the universe, that meant one thing. He was telling the truth. What was even more concerning was that when she looked at the Viltrumite Vegeta was with, she seemed to be showing the same signs. She wasn't challenging their glares. She wasn't doing anything even remotely hostile. Gamora had heard many tales of Viltrumites. So many, in fact, that she was positive she knew how they would react in every situation. But this one, she was just calm. Not calm, but like she was waiting. She was looking to the Saiyan next to her for guidance on how to proceed. She clearly acknowledged him as her leader, which meant that she acknowledged someone who wasn't a Viltrumite and who wasn't Frieza as her leader. That just felt off to Gamora. But she knew better than to deny it, so as she listened to their story come to a close, her eyes opened as she leveled them at the people in the vicinity. "So," she began, "you're part of a resistance movement, and this whole thing, even that battle going to shit over there, that was part of your plan. I'm not gonna lie, I'm actually kind of impressed." Raditz bit his tongue. He definitely also was the least bit impressed. But if he was being honest, he was more confused than anything else. Vegeta was still determined to get revenge for their people, for his father, for the Kryptonians who fought at the Saiyan side, the people who had long since faded from the stars. That alone wasn't what confused Raditz. If anything, he expected it from the Prince of All Saiyans. He was just confused why Vegeta would choose to go about this in such an underhanded way, why he would continue working with Frieza in order to destroy him, why he wouldn't simply leave the Empire and train on his own to come back strong enough to challenge the Emperor another day. "Do you really think that you stand a chance like this? That just catching Frieza or Nolan off guard will be enough?" Raditz questioned. "If you're even slightly underprepared, they will overrun you. Do you think that you're capable of fighting them with just the people at your side now?" Raditz asked, not asking the last question that he really wanted to. Do you really think that woman at your side is going to help you? Do you really think that when the time comes and when the chips are laid down, that a Viltrumite will kill not only one of her superiors, but one of the most respected members of her people? The Viltrumite girl saw directly through Raditz's facade, saw through his words and directly through to their meaning. She got up, walking over to him, staring him dead in the eye. "I already know what you're talking about, Saiyan. You don't need to hide your meaning from me. If you think I'm not capable of supporting my team through this endeavor, then all you need to do is say it out loud." "I wasn't necessarily saying anything." "Yes, you were. Vegeta is your prince. He's the last remnant of a society that, for all intents and purposes, the Saiyans basically worshipped. You know your people treated the monarchy as gospel. Would you be questioning Vegeta if I wasn't a member of his team? If instead of me being here, it was a Saiyan girl?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. The silence that emanated around Raditz was all the girl before him needed to hear, to know that she was right on the money. Raditz, to his credit, didn't back down. He brushed her hand off of his shoulder as he stared dead at her. "Can you blame me? This could be the most dangerous mission a Saiyan has ever undertaken, an entire empire being the enemy of our prince. Our prince who barely has a force left to fight with. And somehow, his only co-conspirator outside of Nappa is a member of a species who thought of Saiyans as nothing more than germs to be wiped out of the cosmos. A race so bloodthirsty that Frieza trusts them to be nothing more than his lackeys, and be happy for the arrangement for all of eternity. Can you think of any universe out there where I would be insane enough to trust you? To just trust that a bloodthirsty beast grew a conscience?" Raditz wasn't sure what kind of reaction to expect from Anissa, what kind of reaction the Viltrumite girl would have. Rage at being disbelieved? Maybe she would belittle him like her people had done once he had pushed her. He certainly wasn't expecting what happened. Laughter, let alone laughter as loud as she had given him in the moment. Grew a conscience? Is that what you're thinking? That's honestly hilarious. You have nothing to be concerned about if that's what you are worried of. You don't have to rely on a Viltrumite's conscience. Rest assured I'm still as morality-free as you would expect of a bloodthirsty beast. Lady, you aren't really doing wonders for our trust here, Peter said, tilting his eyebrow. The woman turned back at him. What? I would hate to disappoint the Saiyan on your team. If he's expecting a bloodthirsty monster, then who am I to say I'm anything else? If it makes you more comfortable, then consider me a beast on a leash. One who only attacks those who truly deserve it. Vegeta gently waved his subordinate to back down. She took a breath, sitting beside him, and Raditz really took in the visage of the both of them. It was the same kind of image that he had on their team back in the day, when they relied on each other, trusted each other. It was that look in Vegeta's eyes, the look he gave Anissa now, that told Raditz that Vegeta was looking out for him when he sent him away. That look of complete trust, that look of caring in your teammates. It was that look that made Raditz back down, at least for now. Even if I were to believe this, and I'm not saying that I do, what would that mean for us? Raditz turned to Peter, their de facto leader. He had to admit that definitely made things a bit more awkward. Peter himself was nowhere near as authoritative as Vegeta was. So when attention got drawn to the boy by the two warriors on the other side of the aisle, Raditz could tell that Vegeta was almost judging his decision for following him. That he was examining Peter, examining him for any signs of the leadership that Vegeta showed. Oh, I don't know, dude. Peter shrugged nonchalantly. Raditz flinched at the flagrant disregard for their situation right now. He had all but defended Peter's lack of respect for danger earlier to Gamora. He just forgot that meant lack of respect for a lot of other things, too. We came out here to rescue your friend and find a way out of here, but apparently your people have already got everything pretty worked out. Which I think means we're stuck here until the whole Frieza Force goes kablooey. Vegeta looked between the two of them, his stoic face breaking into a smile. I see. I do have to admit this boy is much more your style, Raditz. Vegeta laughed. Raditz examined his old leader's voice. It didn't seem at all like Vegeta was condemning him. More like he was just pointing something out. You never were one for a traditional military structure, were you? You got scared far too easily for that. When I sent you away, I expected you to be living a quiet, peaceful life right now with your father and mother. Not to mention your younger brother, who I imagine is a young boy at this point. For you to be hunkered down on this Earth planet. I never imagined that you wouldn't be able to find it in the first place, and I do apologize for that. As your leader, it was my mistake. Raditz flinched. Vegeta wasn't a bad person by any means, but he almost never admitted to making mistakes. At least not in the time that he knew him. And if he did, he would never apologize for it. He was way too prideful for that. Though, even if that didn't happen, Vegeta continued, it would seem that Earth found you. And evidently, you're quite compatible. He looked at Raditz's attire, at the much less unified clothing that Raditz wore on his person, the jacket, the shirt, the lack of any signifying team emblem. Everything about Raditz looked much more relaxed than the last time Vegeta laid eyes on him. I suppose that's accurate. Don't mistake me, we are still looking for Earth, and hopefully we'll find it. But we don't really need to live on Earth to have a good time. Peter grinned. Raditz found himself unconsciously nodding at the Guardian's founder's words. When you crashed our little party, you said you were, to use your words, a couple of nutballs guarding the galaxy, if I remember correctly. Vegeta said, his voice sounding somewhat amused in the moment. He leaned forward, examining the Guardians trio. Their leader, for lack of a better term, Peter Quill, didn't seem like he was capable of taking anything particularly seriously. But he was a competent enough fighter to keep up with Anissa. Raditz was definitely stronger than the last time Vegeta saw him. And the woman beside him, she didn't seem to have as close a connection as the two of them did, but she seemed to at least be on their side for the time being. She didn't object to being lumped in with them. And she seemed to be calm and collected under fire. Together, the Guardians of the Galaxy might have been competent enough for what Vegeta was envisioning. Might have. What exactly does guarding the galaxy entail for you? It was the first time that Vegeta had directly asked a question to Peter, not Raditz. I guess just helping people and doing what we want? Peter shrugged. He looked up at Vegeta, who seemed to be wanting a bit more from him. That's really about it, dude. The Guardians are about freedom, you know? We live our lives how we please, we help whoever we want, and we hurt the people that we feel like need hurting. Raditz and Anissa shared a glance. Both of them could see in the moment what the other was feeling. Raditz was confused on Vegeta's level of questioning, but Anissa seemed more frustrated. She seemed to understand whatever it was that Vegeta was going for, and she did nod at him, showing that she, at least tacitly, approved of it, or would go along with it at the very least. And what exactly constitutes as someone who needs hurting? Would, for example, two of the largest known empires to civilization? Seriously? Gamora asked. Didn't you just say everything was going according to plan? Why would you want us to mess it up for you? She already put together the pieces in her mind. So you're the smart one here. That's good to know, Anissa replied. As it stands right now, unfortunately, your presence has already created an issue. We had to dispose of a pool. And right before the idiot died, he mentioned seeing other people who weren't Skrulls on the planet. He even managed to get out that he thought Vegeta had done something to them before, well, Vegeta did something to him. Anissa tapped against the scouter she had deactivated. These things are unfortunately always recording, always sending messages to each other. Normally, we don't turn them off. If we did, that would be suspicious. Me and Vegeta did, because it fell under the parameters of our mission, she put in quotation marks. But more than likely, a pool. What, do you think there's some kind of chance that the Frieza Force party in the city caught wind of what you were doing out here? Gamora asked. Vegeta shrugged. There's a chance. It's not a large one, and even if it is, they'll be dead soon enough, Vegeta replied. There is, however, a chance that somebody else heard the communications. Somebody... Raditz paused, the implication setting in. Vegeta was a smart boy. Raditz knew that Vegeta and his companion went radio silent, making sure that they wouldn't let off any signals that could alert the others to their presence while they were taking down these towers. But if a pool's radio signature really did go off, really did reach the other members of the Frieza Force, it could mean that the Skrulls were now aware that there were other people on the planet, outside of the main legion of soldiers attacking their capital city. It could mean... The Skrulls know about you now, Raditz realized. Vegeta's eye twitched in irritation. It wasn't the plan, but it's a likely possibility. We took down their communications array, but we never really accounted for our own. The signal of scouters is strong enough to reach between planets, so it's not a stretch to say there could be some form of communication within the city that managed to pick it up. They probably won't be able to get the message out to the rest of the planet, but the people inside of the city will still know. If that's the case, after Kui dies, they'll come searching the surrounding area for us. We planned on taking the city after Kui's assault. They would be completely unprepared and thinking they had already seen the worst of the attack, Anissa added on. That's why we were confident just the two of us alone could take them. But if they're even slightly prepared for an ambush, then things could get a lot worse. I see how that's a problem. For you, Gamora replied. And for you, Vegeta said. If they're looking for us, how long do you think it's going to take them to find other non-Skrull life forms on this planet? It would be the first thing they looked for. Simple sweeps will be able to pick up your ship, if not your biology. He gestured down to the scouter, the object that was on the ground and at this point broken. We have things that are capable of doing that. Even if the Skrulls aren't advanced enough to come up with their own kind of portable scouter, it would be silly to think that they didn't have a scanner of some kind. One that they're just looking for a reason to use. Can you honestly tell me they wouldn't find you? Gamora was quiet as she listened to Vegeta. She couldn't tell him that. This planet had continued to screw with her in more ways than one. Were they really ready to fight off a whole military, especially on the planet's home turf? Her mind was already starting to formulate different ideas on how they could manage to stay under the radar, but none of them worked. Her mind was formulating ideas on how they could fight, but in every scenario, the Guardians of the Galaxy went down within an hour or two at best. So, you want us to fight with you then? Is that it? Gamora asked. Essentially, yes, Vegeta replied. We're far enough away from the other scroll-occupied worlds that we have a bit of an advantage. It will take them too long to get a gigantic amount of reinforcements here. So we just have to deal with the military force of this planet alone. Without the element of surprise, Anissa, myself, and Nappa could be overtaken. Raditz paused. He figured that Nappa would be here, but it was still a bit of a surprise for him to know that he was on the same planet with his old mentor. It made him glad. It's just the three of us. As it stands right now, we have no backup, no people watching our flank, nobody to make sure that we don't get overwhelmed by sheer numbers alone. That is, if we go with the plan as originally intended. So, we could use your assistance. The assistance of the... Vegeta ground. Guardians of the Galaxy. Of your new team. Vegeta stood up from his seat, walking directly beside Raditz, beside his old crew member, his old subordinate. I'm not going to lie to you, Raditz. You always were weaker than us. Vegeta continued. Raditz stiffened slightly. He knew that was true. That was why Vegeta made sure to send him away in the first place. When I first sent you off to join your family, I did so because I was very sure if you stuck around, the Viltrumites would have buried you. I was sure you wouldn't have been able to keep up with the intense training we had to do. The demands, the beatings. I was positive it would have crushed your soul. At best, it would have left you a remnant of your former self. Looking at you now, I'm more sure than ever that I was absolutely correct. Weird pep talk, dude. Isn't he supposed to be your friend? Peter turned to Raditz, who waved him off. If Vegeta was saying something, it likely meant that he felt there was a purpose behind it. Vegeta turned his face to Gamora, and then Peter. These people right here are the most unserious bunch that I've had the pleasure of running into in a long time. The way that boy talks alone, he pointed at Peter, is enough to make me think that he's never gone through a horrific event in his life. Rude, Peter said under his breath. It was definitely a weird thing to be offended by, people not thinking that you had enough trauma, but he was abducted from his home by people he barely knew. It was long enough ago that he barely thought about it now, but still, it sucked, and he definitely didn't want anybody to minimize it. The way that he fought against Anissa made it clear to me that he isn't a warrior. If anything, the whole thing seemed like a dance to him, Vegeta continued, ignoring Peter's outburst. I don't think I've ever seen a man fight like that, and yet Anissa couldn't hit him. Anissa groaned under her breath. This clearly means that he's not worthless. As a matter of fact, I'd say he was the best person for you to find. An expert fighter who's still childish enough to make a group called the Guardians of the Galaxy. A warrior naive enough to think that he can simply go around doing whatever he pleases. A friend above a soldier. Vegeta turned to Raditz, the boy looking at the prince, who seemed to have a smile on his face. I know all too well the value of loyalty, and I can see that, at the very least, that boy has yours. So... Vegeta turned to the others, letting the question hang in the air. Would they fight against the Skrull Empire? Launch an attack with more firepower than the Skrulls were expecting? Vegeta seemed pretty positive that the addition of the Guardians of the Galaxy would be enough to tip the scales. Raditz turned to Peter, who seemed to pause, twirling his gun in his hand. Okay, well, I am an excellent leader, and thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Prince of All Saiyans. I do try my best to not do things without making sure my team is okay with it. At least, most of the time. Peter turned to the others. I, personally, am perfectly alright with bashing a few heads in. I mean, we know all the Skrulls suck. They have this coming. So, I'm not gonna force you guys into a fight that you don't think we can win. We're gonna do a unanimous vote. Peter turned to Gamora, pointing at her. I suppose I'm in favor of such a thing. We don't really have much choice, do we? She replied. Peter nodded at her, smiling as he turned away. For the record, the fact that you responded to that question does make you an official Guardian of the Galaxy. No takebacks. His tone was joking, but Gamora seemed to pause. It was serious enough for her. For now, those terms are acceptable, Quill, she said, her voice flat. Peter hid the fact that his smile grew a little bit more as he pointed to Raditz. Raditz looked at his friend, his leader. He had the chance to work with his former prince at least one more time. It would be the first time, in a very long time, that Raditz would have the opportunity to work with somebody who was around before his planet blew up, before it was evaporated from the cosmos. His family was gone, and he still had no idea where Earth was. This would, in essence, be the last piece of home he would experience for a while. If we're going to do this, that does mean we can't hold anything back. We would have to move quickly and efficiently. And hopefully we would all be able to cover our faces like Quill if we can. Otherwise, the Guardians would be making enemies of the entire Skrull Empire. Peter chuckled as his mask came over his face. Dude, we're outlaws. I'm pretty sure we're already wanted by the Kree. There's no way we're avoiding being wanted by the Skrulls. But look at it this way. Back on my planet, the most famous pirates around had governments all around who hated them. We're just stepping up to the big leagues. Hui's eye was twitching. He was irritated. Actually, irritated wasn't even close to what he was feeling. Not only had one of his men run out of the fight without his express permission, but what that man picked up, it got on his nerves. Not only was Vegeta stupid enough to get him into a situation where he was hurt, but there were other people on the planet. People who apparently weren't Skrulls, judging by how surprised Apul was. It would just have to be one more thing that he would have to look into after he finished mopping up this situation. Thankfully, even though he hadn't seen Nappa in a moment, Kui had managed to gain some ground. These super Skrulls that they had sent after them were beginning to fall. They started with 100. Now their numbers were in their 30s. Kui really was the most powerful person on his team. He felt that he could take care of this. He just needed a break. He really needed one if he was being honest. He had been carrying most of the full brunt of the Skrulls' attacks against the Frieza Force. If anyone was carrying them forward in this fight, it was him, and he didn't have the steam to keep doing it. His lackeys had been, well, lacking. At least 50% of them had died in the first initial moments of the assault, and it had only gotten worse and worse over time. The only other reliable person he had with him was Raspberry. And even he, at this point in time, seemed like he was practically falling apart. Worthless, all of them. And given that Apul's signal got cut off so quickly, it probably meant that he was dead too. Most likely along with Vegeta and Anissa. Kui charged up a blast in his hand, unleashing it once more. A blast that contained at least half of his remaining ki reserves, and thankfully, enough to cut through a swath of at least 300 Skrulls by his count, including one Super Skrull. As his ki made contact with them, they disintegrated on the breeze. Unfortunately, it didn't have the desired effect. For some reason, Skrulls didn't seem to have much of a sense of self-preservation. Whenever a gap opened in the battlefield, they flooded it, ready for their group to be the next set wiped off the planet. They were like ants, very persistent, shape-shifting ants. Raspberry, are you done with the people behind? I need help in the front line, Kui asked, his voice making it very clear that this was more an order than the question. What came through the other end of his scouter wasn't a voice, it was a scream. Sir, something terrible has happened. Our back lines are falling apart. Our soldiers are firing on each other. Our soldiers are? Kui's eyes widened as he shouted into his scouter. Are you stupid? Do you not have your scouter set to scan DNA? Most of our scouters were broken in the assault, sir. I don't understand. Raspberry's voice came frantic on the other end. Those aren't our people. Do you understand me? Shapeshifting. Kui didn't think that would be a very useful skill to them to use on their planet. They weren't integrating themselves into a wider government structure. They weren't doing any of their usually cowardly spy tactics. Kui didn't think that they would try something so reckless as putting on the armor of those they killed and taking their forms. Truly, the Skrull's depravity knew no levels. I want you to fire on them, immediately! None of us can tell who we're supposed to be firing on, sir. They're all wearing our uniforms. The infighting has spread to... Ah! Raspberry's screams of pain echoed through the static on the other side of the scouter. Kui tapped against it in frustration, then slammed on it, trying to convince himself that it was just a faulty piece of hardware that he was fighting with. Not that one of his last top generals had been obliterated. Kui never put that much value in Raspberry, or Apul for that matter. He just saw them as necessary for what he was doing, but nothing further than that. They were people who could command the smaller fractions of the army that he couldn't be bothered with. They were strong enough to not be overwhelmed quickly. Things had fallen apart around him, everywhere. It was like the Skrulls that he had seen as nothing but ants to be wiped out, had merged. Like the tiny insects had become a great wall that threatened to crush him. He let a smile creep across his face. Fine then. You want a fight? A real fight, is that it? A laugh came under his tone as he shouted to the denizens of Scrollos. He could hear his men, or what was left of them, stop breathing behind him, as though they were waiting for him, their savior, to give them a great comeback. Maybe they would have a comeback, but nobody on this field would be alive to see it. Qui was unfortunately very sure about that now. But if he was going to lose, he wouldn't be the only loser here. His legacy would define his actions. He would wipe the scrolls off the face of their own world, even if it meant his own life. The Frieza Force would chant Qui's name for centuries. The scrolls would face their most devastating loss in their history. He pointed toward the scrolls in the front line, like he was pointing at an audience waiting to hear a performer on stage. A real fight? A space where I show you the full might of what the Frieza Force is capable of, without all this paltry holding back nonsense. Very well. You should know that you face an elite officer, one capable of detonating worlds far bigger than this slum. His ki sparked around him, his energy pushing out further and further into the epicenter of the city. He even started using something that he knew he shouldn't have, his life force, as fuel to the fire. The scrolls around him found themselves unable to push further, as though they were now held back by an invisible barrier. Face obliterations at the hands of a superior empire, a superior species, a superior man, at the hand of Qui, Admiral of the Frieza Force. He gave himself a deathbed promotion with his dying gasp. His voice melted with the war cries of his men, their last great effort echoing out into the cosmos as light began to swallow the area. The last thing Qui saw was the silhouette of Vegeta and his pet Viltrumite. Among them, there were shapes he didn't recognize. It didn't matter. They were alive. Good. There would be somebody to clean up this mess. Hopefully, Vegeta wouldn't prove himself completely useless. What Qui missed as his life faded was Vegeta smiling, as the aura around the energy quickly faded. Its expansion completed in a few mere moments. Qui's blast hadn't encompassed the world, not anything like it. Between the scroll's shielding technology and Vegeta's own pushing back of Qui's ki to make sure it hadn't swallowed them, it had managed to swallow most of the capital city without going any further. Most of the scrolls died at once, evaporating, their bodies blowing away in the wind. The super scrolls were fine. Some of them had managed to shield some of their soldiers in turn. A quick scan of the battlefield saw that maybe 200 soldiers in total had survived. Vegeta could see something that made him positive he was on the right track. The scrolls inside the city were already trying to put themselves together to group up once more. Like they hadn't expected the battle to be over yet, despite the fact that the Frieza Force was gone. He could even see some of them making motions directing survivors outside, likely to come looking for any stragglers, or any people they thought weren't supposed to be on the planet. Other attackers, secret assassins, or something of the like. They probably expected Vegeta's team to be hiding in the sewers or scoping in the forest, somewhere where nobody would look, ready to strike at the last possible moment. And that was the original plan, but now... Vegeta raised a finger in the air, letting loose a single ki beam. It wasn't a very large one, not one strong enough to kill anybody, not even one strong enough to be seen by most people who weren't looking for it. But he knew somebody who would be. Listen up. This might be a capital city, but this still is a military encampment. Everyone down on the planet right now is a highly trained soldier. Do not hesitate, and do not disappoint me, Vegeta ordered. Ease the temper there, G.I. Joe, we got this, Peter said next to him, getting into a ready chance to charge down. Raditz in turn was right next to Peter, and Gamora had taken point behind. Anissa hovered above, ready to strike above all of them. Right now, they were just waiting on a word, a single word from the prince. From below, Vegeta saw Nappa step out into the open. And without making a sound, Nappa smiled, raising 2 fingers in the air, as the ground beneath the scrolls began to crack and shatter. Having just survived one of the most dangerous explosions they had probably ever faced on their homeworld, they would now have to face another one. Another much bigger one from a more highly trained soldier. A giant storm. Vegeta watched as a few more of the silhouettes disappeared. and right as the smoke cleared, his eyes focused on the largest-looking scroll in the area. The scroll who seemed to have the largest power signature according to his measurements. And, with a single word, the Guardians of the Galaxy and their newfound allies began to rain hell down on the unsuspecting forces below. Now! In another corner of the universe, on Earth, there was no battle. There were no explosions. A team of kids had just landed at a place made for battle. They landed at the birthplace of none other than Captain America, Steve Rogers, the spot that was the epicenter of Project Rebirth, the spot that had thrust superhumans far more into the spotlight than they ever had been before. It was a space of historic proportions, and... it's empty? Tony's eye twitched as he looked around. There was supposed to be a Dragonball here. They did think there was a possibility that it could be a trap, but a trap would at least have to have something. This place was empty. Just an empty military base. Not even one armed guard. They didn't have to fight their way in, sneak their way in. They just walked through the front door as they landed. He would have preferred at least getting shot at. That would have made more sense. It's completely empty. You gotta be freaking kidding me. Well, if you're that mad, you're not gonna like what I have to say next, Bulma said next to him. She too looked confused, much less irritated about the situation than Tony, thankfully. Normally he had been the level-headed one in their relationship, but it looked like she was going to have to carry that torch for now. She held up the dragon radar to Tony, who looked down at it, his eyes twitching as he now grunted out in irritation. So the signal's just gone. Like, gone? How the heck does that even happen? He scratched at his head. The Dragon Balls, individually, still had enough collective power to run a city. That kind of power couldn't just disappear in an instant. It was scientifically impossible. He might have already had an experience that stretched the realms of scientific possibility, like fighting a giant crocodile, for example, but he drew the line at this. It didn't move anywhere? Is there another big signal close by? I'm afraid not, Mr. Stark, T'Challa said next to him. He and Shuri had been performing their own examinations. If there was some kind of energy signature, we would have been getting a frequency from it. All energy has a kind of frequency, and with something as potent as Dragon Ball, it should have a high one. And yet, for some reason, it seems like the frequencies within this area are just slightly above normal. In other words, there shouldn't be anything all that powerful here, at least not unshielded. Shuri continued her brother's thought. Shielded? Huh. Tony thought to himself. It could still technically be a possibility, but none of the buildings around here were big enough to contain any kind of secret rooms or compartments. He already scanned through the area at least once, but he supposed there wasn't harm in checking again. He turned to try and find the alien members of his team. Well, mostly alien. He still didn't have much of an idea of what Diana was outside of supposedly mythical. He managed to spot Granola hanging overhead, floating above the area. He was pretty jealous that he could do that without a vehicle. Tony pressed the button against his ear. A chirping sound signaling his ability to communicate with Granola had been established. Hey, you have crazy good eyesight, right? Tony asked. Granola nodded in the air. Do you see anything that looks irregular? Any spot where maybe the buildings are too wide, or where there's a door where there shouldn't be one? Granola paused in the air, focusing as he put his cerulean sight to use. He focused on every spot in the area, foot by foot, making sure not to skip over anything. And because of that, there was a long silence between him and Tony. As his examination went on, he could hear the human's frustration on the other end. If anything, it made him want to move even slower. But the only thing that could break his amusement over the human being so frustrated would be the human talking about why he was so frustrated. I scanned over the top of the base. There's nothing here. I'm moving to the bottom. Wait. Wait, what? Tony asked on the other end. You said this was an abandoned base, correct? Nobody's touched this thing since the 40s? Granola asked. Yeah, not since Captain America and the Joestars. Why? Tony replied. Granola had done a significant amount of research on Earth every chance he got, especially once they had been introduced to the Wakandans, which meant that he knew a great deal about this organization known as S.H.I.E.L.D. that gave Captain America his abilities, including what their logos looked like. And there was a spot on the ground, one that seemed to have a different logo painted over it than the others. It looked like it was still aged, like the other ones, but The design was newer. They only started using that design easily a decade after World War II. It could have been nothing, but all the same. Cal. Granola didn't raise his voice when he said his adopted brother's name. He knew the boy would be able to hear him. I know you don't have a communicator, so I'm letting you know that there's a spot I want you guys to check out, okay? It's probably not all that dangerous, but if you see anything, let me know. Down below, Kal-El nodded. He turned to his brother, who was currently trying to entertain Diana. The girl seemed to be at least somewhat amused with her sparring session with him, even if they weren't able to make a lot of noise or crash into buildings like they did the first time. Hey, Goku! The young Kryptonian shouted. Goku looked up towards his brother, distracting him just enough for Diana to land a solid hit on his face, crashing the boy to the ground. Ow, cheap shot, Goku grumbled to himself. Diana actually seemed to agree, looking quite guilty at her fist having made contact with the boy's face. Apologies, I wasn't expecting the distraction. She reached out, lifting him to his feet. Goku laughed it off already, having seemed to forgot the incident. The laugh somehow spread to the warrior girl, who too seemed to have forgotten her transgression. The sight made Kal-El smile. His brother certainly had a knack for rubbing off on people. Honestly, by the time this quest for the Dragonballs was done, he didn't have a doubt in his mind that the serious girl before him was going to end up being just as smiley as Goku was. It was just in his nature. Goku even got to Granola sometimes. Kal-El walked up to Goku and started explaining what Granola had said to him. Before he could even fully get through the explanation, Goku was already running towards the shield logo by himself. And to his surprise, Diana seemed to be right alongside the boy, seeming to approach the matter with the same sense of enthusiasm. Kal-El sighed. Normally he was able to rein in his brother's actions, but he didn't know what to do now that there was two of them. And unfortunately, because Goku had more of a knack for training than young Kal-El, he had taken off at a faster speed than the boy was prepared to follow. Goku had already reached his destination, by the time Kal-El was even halfway there. And when he did, Goku pushed against the ground, with enough force for the ground to crack. There has to be something around here. Stupid secret entrances, Goku muttered to himself. He tapped against the ground a couple more times with his superhuman strength, and that last little push was all the old door needed. The whole thing crumbled, leaving a giant square gaping hole, Goku tumbling down inside of it. Diana didn't even take a moment to jump in after him. Kal-El, meanwhile, looked to the sky, focusing as he unleashed a red beam of light from his irises before he too did the same. Down below, Goku was the first one to fall, so he was also the first one to land. And he landed right on his back, groaning as he got to his feet. Not wasting any time, he let loose a ball of ki in his hand to allow him to look around in this dark area. It looked a little bit like the interior of a cave, and he had seen more than a few of them in his time living in the wilderness. Unlike Tony or Shuri or T'Challa, Goku wasn't really smart enough to know what most of the technology around this place was. All he could really see was flashing lights and buttons everywhere. But eventually, something did manage to catch his eye. There was a large glass tube put in the center of the room. It was almost directly in his eye line from where he landed. And in that tube, he could see something orange. As he got closer, he could see a deeper red reflected in the orange. A red that took the shape of a star, of a Dragonball. He had done it. He found it first. He had already planned 1,000 different ways he was going to rub Granola's face in that. He started to slowly reach out toward the orb, only for his hand to collide against something. Like there was an extra layer around the glass, something he couldn't see. It was clear. Huh? Goku tilted his head. Then something happened. Goku felt a chill up his spine. His ability to sense the presence of ki in the area shot through his nerves, warning him of imminent danger. He ducked down, a strand of hair being cut from his head by an object, something sharp, something that moved faster than a bullet. He flipped back, putting his fists up, as Kal-El and Diana joined him. Dang it, Goku, did you have to wander off like... Kal-El paused, seeing the smile gracing his brother's face. A very wide smile at that. The kind that he only had when they were sparring with their family. You guys might want to get ready, Goku replied, still not dropping his smile. Beside him, Diana looked to the spot where Goku had just gazed. Out of the shadows stepped a woman. A woman in a full green suit, green hair cascading down her. She seemed to move with a fluidity that shouldn't accompany a person's bone structure, and the weapon she was holding in her hand looked like a blade, but different. The way the metal seemed to shine was wrong, almost. It was like it was glowing even among the blackness. I think things just got fun, Goku continued. Fun, huh? I didn't expect anybody else to see it that way. Especially not somebody I'm about to kill. The woman raised her blade up, and Diana seemed to flinch upon seeing it. It seemed to have a craftsmanship that exceeded the weapons on Themyscira, and some of those weapons were actually made by the gods. What concerned her most, though, was that the woman wasn't alone. She could tell there was something skulking behind her in the background, something that seemed to light up the second she noticed it, a bright red glow emanating from the center of its face, a sigil emblazoned on its chest, 2 R's right back to back. Hail, Hydra, the two said in unison, their voices echoing out into the space around them. Hey everybody, I just want to say a quick thank you for coming back to check in on this section of Earth OCU, Dragon Ball Edition. This time I got to do Goku's team's first encounter with the Red Ribbon Army itself. Since their parents had already met some of the Red Ribbon Army, it was about time. And I also got to do a significant chunk of Vegeta's story. I had planned on putting some of Bardock's in here too, but the script was already getting a bit too long, and I'm trying to keep the script shorter so that I can have shorter upload times, even though this video took a lot longer to upload than I had initially planned. Next time on this story, I'm likely going to focus mostly on Vegeta and Goku yet again, but I should hopefully have enough time to get into some Bardock stuff, so look forward to that. The next video coming up in the Earth OCU series is a My Hero video, but there should be an extra surprise as well. Part of the reason videos are taking a bit longer to get out is, 1, because I just have a lot of stuff going on in my life right now and I'm extremely busy with a lot of things. But 2, it's also because, as a writer, I feed off of my enthusiasm for writing at the moment, and it takes a lot of effort to stay enthusiastic all the time. But my excitement for one specific story really came back in full force recently. So you guys should be getting the return of the Avatars and the Alchemists in the near future. This is something I'm really excited about. I've been pushing it off more and more because I've been trying to keep the mainstay Earth OCU stuff in front and consistent because that's the main thing that my channel was built around. But I realize it's still a story that I really want to write and I really want to keep putting out. And I'm going to try and focus on keeping a lot more of my love and excitement for writing at the forefront as I continue forward. So please look forward to that. In the meantime, if you did like this video, let me know by leaving a like, and be sure to comment to let me know what you liked about it. And finally, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the future of this or any other content that I produce. In the meantime, I've been your captain, and it's been a genuine pleasure to take you on another tour of the strongest Earth in the multiverse. Goodbye now.